only words that will consolidate us and unite us as Africans, O King of Glory. Father, I want to thank you that you are in charge, regardless of whatever is happening in the world today. We acknowledge your authority and power of our lives, of our family, of our nation. In Jesus' mighty name we pray.
Amen.
Amen.
And amen. Thank you so much, Mama Cecilia Ogwao, for that very powerful prayer and joining us this morning. Now, let me take the opportunity to also invite to our studios here, Ndugu Tuko. Tuko is a researcher and he's from the Secretariat of the National Resistance Movement. You're very welcome, Ndugu Tuko.
Thank you.
Happy to have you. Happy to have you once again in studios. And the RDC for Gomba, Ndugu Stephen Asimwe, Karibu. I'm happy to have you too. And of course, I call Amazima, the one we are normally here with today. I'll start with you. How's your week been and quite a number of things before we get into the issues?
Well, of course, the week started on a sad note. It was the attempted assassination on General Edward Katumba Wamala, the death, the gruesome murder of the daughter. Then, of course, we also saw that we had the Uganda matters yesterday, which actually the second year running, the celebrations are scientific. And I can imagine very many people are counting losses now for the second year. And in Kenya, it was Jamhuri Day every 1st of June. Yes, it is Jamhuri Madaraka Day. And yeah, so that's how the week was.
Okay. Well, that's very important. Mama Cecilia Ogwal. Things are happening in the country, of course. Today what we want to talk about is, we want to talk about the African Parliament. We want to talk about the African parliaments, now not the Pan-African Parliament, but the African parliaments, parliaments on the continent, and their impact in fostering the African agenda. The African agenda, because we are into that decade of implementing the African Agenda 2030, and we just want to know how much our individual parliaments on the continent can actually help us into fostering and bringing to realization the African agenda. Once again, welcome, Mama Cecilia Ogwal.
Thank you very much. I think before we go into that discussion, it is important that we put on record our condolences for what has happened to our dear friend and brother and leader, General Katumba Wamala. I personally know him, and he's a man who has related very well with civilians. It's not like other generals that people have complained about. Him and General Ronda have always put up a very good face. So there is no, you don't see militarism behind the title of general. So I think it's very unfortunate what has happened to him, which has taken the life of the daughter. That the death of that girl has touched me. Brenda has touched me as a mother. To see your daughter going at that age is very painful. It will take us time to recover, even if we are not direct parents, but it has affected us. It takes a lot to bring up a girl to that standard. And I also want to say that it is a time that the government should wake up. I remember at some point, the president came up with, I think, a 10-point program or more about how to resolve security in the country. And I think since he's going to address the nation this week, I hope he will go through those points.
He's actually addressing the nation tonight.
So
this afternoon.
We'll pray that he goes through those points and he tells us what has happened since he made a commitment and came up with a package of commitments to resolve the issue of insecurity. Because all of us now feel insecure. We have seen the head of police killed in broad daylight, and we have seen up to now, nobody has been arrested. Now we have seen a general.
They've been arrested, maybe resolving the murder.
Well, I don't, not that we have. I mean, you have to tell us, were they really the ones who killed those police officers? And now the family of the general. So if they can target the head of police, if the criminals can target a general, then who is safe? What about some of us, you and me? How safe are we? So I think the president has to tell us Has something gone wrong with the government? But the president, in frustration, has made it public that his security system has been infiltrated. If you remember, he talked about the weebles. So now, I hope by now, he has been able to trace where the weebles are coming from, and he has been able to deal with the weebles, because we mothers are very, very careful when we will not put any beans to the fire unless we have cleaned it very well, we have removed all the weebles. Sometimes we use hot water and the weebles come on top before we actually put the beans. So I hope that the president right now has been able to sort out
to sieve the weevil from the good beans.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that is important. Now let's come to the celebration of yesterday. I am very happy that at least a few people were able to represent us at the site, but we have also learned through this COVID that God is not only in church, God is not only in Namugongo.
Or in all those congregations.
And the spirit of the matters are with us all the time. What you need to ask is, can you be a martyr like those young boys who died? Can you today, if you are told that if you don't receive my bribe, I chop off your leg, will you agree, or will you rather take the envelope and go with your leg? The question is, as long as you are in leadership, particularly these young men who are in leadership, resist the temptation. That's the message. Resist the temptation, and the devil will flee. That's what we are taught as Christians. So I think the spirit of the matters is with us on a daily basis. Is with us in your office. Please don't go for your secretary in the office. Resist temptation. Please don't go for bribe. Resist bribery. Resist temptation. And that's the message. And the second thing I observed yesterday is that we have continued to celebrate this Matters Day separately. We have the Anglicans celebrating in their own way, the Catholics celebrating in their own way, but we are all Christians. Jesus is a uniting factor. Jesus died to unite us. Religion should not divide us. I would wish a time when both the Catholics, the Anglican, the Pentecostal, they will all gather together to celebrate the Matters Day, the blood of these innocent Ugandans, and to teach one message. So that is what I'm praying for. It's good that the Anglican, they congregate and celebrate, so are the Catholics, but time will come and we should all pray that let Jesus be a uniting factor. If Jesus were to come today, Jesus will not say, no, let me first go to the Catholic Church, then I go to the Anglican Church, then I go to Pentecostal, then I go to Baptist. No, everybody will be drawn to Jesus. And I think that is what we are looking forward to, that there will be one big celebration that will unite all Christians together in one spirit, preaching the same message. And that's what I want. And I'm always wondering, people think only Christians were killed, only Catholics and Anglican. Of course, at that time, there were no Pentecostals available in Uganda at that time. But people don't talk about Muslims who were also martyred. You know, where do Muslims celebrate theirs? I want to know. But the Muslims were also killed. So
they don't want to venerate them, but they were killed on the first. They are exactly on the first, and this is on the third.
Exactly. So I don't know why we have covered up this thing. Are we shy about it? Do we think that God has closed the gate of heaven to Muslims, or what? So I think time has come for us to acknowledge that Muslims also live for God, the same God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the same God that we worship. So I also pray that at some point we will take in the Muslims as well and respect them for the faith, because those young people died for their faith, and the Muslims also died for their faith. So this is what I would wish. Otherwise, I thank you for inviting me to discuss this important subject.
We'll get there. Let me go to the RDC and just talk about security briefly before I get into issues, because you manage and head security in a district, and that's how we are. Mama Cecilia Gwalia just asked a question which so many wananchi out there ask: if there is a target on a 4-star general Now, how about those who never get a small rank on themselves because they're not even anywhere near the ranks? What happens to the rest of the Wananchi who applying everywhere in and out of towns and villages?
Thank you, and I'm very glad to be with the veteran politician who has actually articulated many issues. Security is complex, even if you go to the UN Security Council. From what you see in Uganda, when we are in districts, actually, we deal with this foundation security. People who are stealing goats, people who are defiling children, people who are getting bribes, as she said. But you see, you have to get, there is this foundation security, national security, the geopolitics. You get me? You know, those of you who are talking about Pan-African Parliament, you have this great Rex. So this security matters are complex, but we feel sad, of course, for what happened this week to our general. And like the veteran politician said, General Katumba has been one of the really disciplined UPDF officer in the history of Uganda. You know, the history of Uganda has also challenges of those security complex. Now, when you come to Uganda, of course, as she said, people are killed. Some are, of course, some people are arrested. Investigations go on. But what we are trying to look at is the general national security. You have just finished the elections. You have seen how people threaten each other. Some of these ones are politicians, you know. And the general really with their daughter, it was a sad moment. Now, except that in Uganda, when the president talked about those points, you can see we have tried to put the CCTV, but then they also say those who man them, the Kaukumi you are talking about. The Honorable may not know Kaukumi, that is the thing she was talking about.
She called it weavers.
But the weavers sometimes, as Honorable, as you said, some weavers, as you finish them, others grow. You get me?
Mama said the women use hot water actually to finish them.
Yeah, but the water can also subside. Then others grow. So you may find that weavers are at different levels. Then another thing, of course, this country is a religious country. You know, for God and my country, you wonder how can somebody early morning get on a border, just clear, shooting. So that means he has lost everything in his heart and is just going to finish.
The Mama Cecilia girls have not preached enough gospel to change the hearts of these people.
Yes,
who wake up in
and
the
you
morning.
see, you can have security, but some people's hearts, you get me? When we used to teach, we were teaching about issues of national psyche, national ethos, how do you groom people? These are like condo terrorists. So to come and finish. This general, as Mama said, she has been actually one of the humblest generals I've ever met.
Okay.
Some of us who have been working in security, you would not even be very humble. You remember the former Minister for Justice, Chidu Makuburi. They had demystified the army. How? So he walks, he can eat with people. When he comes to these districts, you find there is no more pomp. But you know what other people say. But you know, now that you have seen what is happening, of course, the threats can be internal or external. As I told you, issues of geopolitics. But the Honorable, as she said, we need to do a lot in terms of either training, in terms of educating, sensitizing, even in communities. If some people is, because you see when we go to these communities, a person comes, stays in your place for a whole week, nobody knows the LC system, the foundation security. And he can create havoc in a village, and in 1 week you are now starting to investigate. So we need to know how we do things every day so that we can improve our security. So the president, I think, will talk about security, not only in Uganda, because Uganda is not like a garden. You have to talk about the geopolitics.
Very important, and that's what will drive us there.
Yes, but finally, I just wanted to appeal to Ugandans that this country has had enough wars, enough killings. They can come together, pray together, reconcile together so that we can build a transformed society. Otherwise, you cannot keep on threatening, you kill people. Now, like this, the daughter of the general. Just innocent soul. Without engaging even in this, the political work. But you find that some people of bad heart, and I think the Cecilias and others who have lived long and worked in most parliaments on this continent, they know areas like Sierra Leone, Liberia, you can now come to Congo here, you go to Rwanda, the genocide, you go to South Sudan, you see that conflict and killing has never
It's what defines
the
Africa.
society.
Hold it there. Ndugu Otuko, in just 2 minutes, yours also on the issues of security and that botched or that attempted, of course, assassination of General Katumba Mala that claimed the life of that very beautiful girl, Robina, I beg your pardon, Brenda, who is now no more.
Thank you very much. Allow me add my voice to my senior comrades. Interestingly, the man on the right here is the man who introduced me into the Pan-African movement when I was from the university. So I'm glad that I'm sharing a platform with him.
Yeah. So we have nurtured. That's the role of leadership.
And the mama here, we've been followers of her leadership. Right from when we were at university. Actually, I used to listen to her on UBC radio that time.
I wanted to thank Honorable Cecilia. When there was tempers at Korora after elections of the speaker and deputy speaker,
I was also going to talk about that.
I saw her leadership coming in by reconciling the two and it reduced
It was a very good
tempers
gesture
in all groups.
It was a very good gesture from Mama Cecilia. Yes, complete.
Well, as I said, I pass my condolence to the family of General. But there is something there's an observation I want to make. That when you look at the time Abiriga was assassinated, it was around the same time.
Abiriga was assassinated on the 8th of June.
It was around the same time.
Actually, it was 7th.
Around the same week of State of Nation address.
We had just gone through the State of the Nation address.
And
we're going to celebrate
that
Heroes
must be
Day.
examined about some of these killings. What are the killers? What message are they trying to send to the authorities or to the people of Uganda? But most importantly, it's about values. When you go to a society now, even a mere simple argument within the communities, people fight on a small thing. And to me, I think it is a sign of degeneration of moral values that Comrade Asime was talking about. Before, last week I talked about the mass Chakam training. In these trainings, people used to think it was militarization of the population, but I think I disagree. This was an opportunity to nurture society, to raise their consciousness, to understand their national values, their moral obligations in dealing with each other. But unfortunately, from the time we suspended these ideological programs, it became a problem. And now everyone is on his own. People do not understand the value of relationships. People think if you are of different political parties, you are enemies. You look at your friend because he's in FDC or NRM as an enemy and so on and so forth. But I think this goes back to the basic issues of orientation.
Okay, very important. Akol, before I come to you, let me come to Mama Cecilia Ugwal here. I just remembered something here. Now, Stephen talked about it, that gesture that you did. Nobody knows actually. Our friend and comrade, work with him here, Charles Odongtho, tweeted and said, I just want to really know what Mama Cecilia Ugwal told the two principals at that time. Nobody knows what to say to them. All we see is just that still picture. But second also, yesterday marked 33 years when we saw that agreement, the Peche agreement, if you remember the Peche agreement, That brought UPDA into the National Army and now getting new leaders like Walter Chula in there. I just wanted to hear from you what you remember about that Peche agreement 33 years ago when we saw the rebels of the UPDA being absorbed into the National Army. That event was also yesterday. I just want to hear from you what you remember about that and maybe the event in Kololo Mama before we get into these issues in just 2 minutes.
Well, I think, first of all, it was going to be unfair for me to be on your studio and I don't congratulate, put on record, appreciation for what happened in Kololo, what the Parliament of Uganda did to come up with the leadership of Parliament. I think those who actually followed the events, you recall that the whole country was put in suspense.
Every country was, the whole country was looking there.
Yeah, the whole country was put in suspense. There's been a long expectation of what was to come. Yes. You know, there was a lot of tension. The NRM would come up with a statement, no campaign, we don't want any campaign, until SEC decides. And then finally SEC met.
SEC decided.
SEC met, and whatever came out of it was contested, which is democratic. So we who watched with interest, we came personally. I came to discover, or from what I was told by one of the contestants, that the SEC did not subject the choice to a democratic process. The SEC simply put certain allegations on the table against one of the candidates, and the candidate, of course, felt that it was unfair. I mean, SEC, I'm not part of NRM, so I feel shy to talk about NRM.
Talk about Ugandan issues.
I would rather talk about something else.
Don't feel shy.
So as far as I'm concerned, one of the contestants was aggrieved that SEC did not subject the choice to democratic process. Now, finally, that aggrieved party did the right thing, went and said, I'm going to offer my candidature to the Assembly of Members of Parliament. Let the Assembly be the one to make a choice. So regardless of what was happening, because there were lots of information and counter-information and disinformation and misinformation, so many. You know, some members of Parliament were held hostage in Hotel Protea, they were being given money. So there were so many stories going on. So as far as I'm concerned, this particular contest for speakership was now put to a democratic platform. So there were people, I mean, there were members of Parliament, they were made to make a choice, open, in a transparent manner. So I believe that regardless of whatever stories were, that went on, regardless of manipulations that went on, the exercise was put to a democratic process.
And it ended.
And therefore, it was loud and clear that Jacob Olanya won with a comfortable majority. And of course, my sister Rebecca Kadaga also got some votes. But to me, that was the end of the process. It had to end. Yes. It had to end, because now if she had opened another chapter that, you know, I'm aware, I'm aware that when we started this meeting, we had only 320. How comes now we are 524? You know, all these things could have come up. There would have been another case raised because people would have said, okay, we were given 20 million before we went in. Others would say other things. And that is, to me, it would be a long process to the end. And it was too much for Parliament, too much for some of us individually. So I felt that was the moment that Rebecca Kadaga also had to play her leadership maturity to agree that the process had ended democratically. Regardless of whatever happened, but it has ended democratically. She had to acknowledge it, because some people would have felt she wasn't happy. So she had to stand up on her own. I escorted her to Honorable Jacob Olanya, and she congratulated Jacob Olanya. And people want to know, what did I say?
Because the picture has lots of interpretations in there.
As far as I'm concerned, it is. I think it's like Jesus when he was dying. He told John, "Here is your mother." So it's like I was telling Olanya, "You are one family," and here ends the contest. So can we from now on start a new life, a new process, leave the past behind? To me, that was the message. And Rebecca Kadaga herself had actually intimated to me that she had wanted to put that on record, that she was happy with the process and she wasn't going to
contest it.
Yeah, contest, and that she
wanted to put on record.
She had sealed. She had
resolved. It's ended.
She had sealed that
is
process.
What members have done.
Yes.
So let's continue.
And that was it. So I thought that is what happened. And to me, that was the greatest moment of my life. That Jacob Olanya, who is actually my son, you know, who is actually my son. I went up to his village. I know where he comes from in Omoro. I know the parents. I've known the family. I've followed him right from university. You remember when he was shot on the 10th of December? You know, these are the children I carried. I carried them when they were bleeding. One of them died. So this is my own child I've seen grow in the process of politics. So his being chosen as speaker is my pride, you know. But at the same time, here I am. We have nurtured women in leadership. Yes. And all of you must agree that Kadaga has really displayed discipline and responsibility in our leadership. It's something that would make we women proud. It's something that would make even NRM proud. But more especially the women. You know, most people think women cannot manage, but here you are. Rebecca Kadaga has managed for 2 terms as deputy speaker, has managed for 2 terms as speaker, and we have never had any scandal behind her. She has never been involved in any corruption or whatever it is. So I think this is the kind of leadership that we expect from women. However, I did not want to be put on record that Rebecca Kadaga has moved out of top leadership in disgrace, in the same way that our sister, Specials Akazibe, was brought down in disgrace. I was personal. I was then right at the forefront of the opposition. But when I saw Specials Akazibe handled the way she was handled, I had to stand out to team up with Specials Akazibe and guided her in the way that she had to go. Because I thought it was unfair that you bring up a woman to the position of vice president and you let fall down just like that in disgrace. I thought that was wrong. But at the same time, I'm happy that the issue of Rebecca Kadaga has ended very well and very peacefully with dignity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mama, let's get to Parliament now. You were, one time, I think, a member of the Pan-African Parliament. We are in this Parliament. We saw members of the opposition choose their leaders represent them, or Uganda, to the Pan-African Parliament they're in. But I want to look at and examine how our parliaments can actually foster the African agenda. Is this something that we do to reward our people, to reward members, to just get rid of those that would cause issues, or there is even some accountability that yes, we go to this parliament for these particular reasons? And so when we talk about the bigger vision, which is the African agenda, we talk about the African agenda 2030, and we also talk about the African dream of 2063. Can our parliaments individually on the continent build towards that big goal? Because there is no African Union if there is no Uganda, if there is no another country. Welcome.
What I can say is that I know you have talked a lot about Pan-Africanism, how OAU came to be, and how it has evolved into AU, and the different branches that we now have in the AU. Of course, the struggle has been able to birth forth a big difference. You remember at the time that the OAU was birth force, there were only 29 members that had achieved sovereign statehood. Only 29 signed the charter, if I recall. But by the time we celebrated 50 years, I was then winding up my tour of the Pan-African Parliament, 2013, when we celebrated 50 years of the existence of OAU or AU, we had then 53 members. The last born is South Sudan.
South Sudan.
So by the time we celebrated 50 years, South Sudan was not yet taken up as a fully pledged member. It joined later on. So you can see that we have evolved over the years, and definitely we can congratulate a united Africa or African Union for having liberated many countries from colonialism. If you remember, that was the character. That was the core, the core issue that confronted OAU when it was born, that it must liberate African countries from all forms of oppression, including colonialism. And indeed, they have done well. If today we can say 54 countries are now liberated, I think that is something we need to celebrate as Africans. However, we have liberated ourselves from colonialism, but we are still left with other issues. How do we deal with consolidation of this hard-won liberation that we had struggled for? Some countries like Kenya shedded blood, South Africa shedded blood. I mean, how do we now make it a reality to the Africans? So I think this is what we were confronted with as a member of the Pan-African Parliament. We found that one of the issues that really confronted Africa was how to stabilize Africa. Because all over Africa, whether you talk about the north or the south or the east or the central, there were pockets of wars, internal conflicts. This time not external. Of course, some of them were extragenous or intragenous, that is induced internally or induced externally. But whatever it is, wars were all over Africa. In East Africa, we had our own wars. In Central Africa, they had their own wars. Over simple things. I mean, if you were to ask, why did we take so long to fight Joseph Kony, for example? And why Joseph Kony? Why Lakwena? You ask these questions, you can't get an answer. You know, so this is what many of the countries are confronted with. As we talk right now, Malta is in turmoil. I think ECOWAS has taken steps to call them to order. I think AU has also suspended Malta because of using undemocratic means of changing government. So this is really some of the culture that we want to adopt now as liberated Africans, that we must maintain peace. We must also appreciate democracy. Not just talk about democracy, but practice and be seen to be practicing democracy and pacify Africa, so that we can start talking about economic development rather than wars, resolving wars, which is so expensive. It takes a lot of resources to fight wars, but it takes half of that to make our country move forward. So what I can say is that as a member of Pan-African Parliament, we had already instituted a system where speakers have their own forum, speakers of the different parliaments. They have their own forum.
On the continent.
Yeah, on the speakers of all the continents. In other words, you are talking about parliament. What is the role of parliament? So the speakers have their forum, and I think they meet in August to discuss how they can domesticate the resolutions and decisions taken by Pan-African Parliament. Resolutions and decisions taken by the different agencies of AU. So this is one of the challenges that we have had. In fact, I remember at one time because I was the leader of the delegation of Uganda, we had 39 countries that had signed the Charter on Democracy and Good Governance. And Uganda was one of the countries that had not signed. And you know, Uganda was very loud.
There were 39 countries, and Uganda was not part of those.
Uganda had not signed that very important charter. So now, how do we handle the matter? My name was on the list to speak. So what I did was I had to mobilize my members, and I took them to the embassy, to visit the embassy. So when they called us, none of us was there. I did tactfully avoiding discussing an issue where I'm a culprit. I mean, because now for me, even if I'm a member of the opposition, I would be very happy to expose Uganda and say, look at Uganda. You know, Uganda talks about homegrown democracy and so on, and yet they cannot even sign the document. This is a very serious allegation. So the best thing to do, even if we disagree internally here, we don't disagree up there, because there we are now
Uganda.
We are ambassadors. And being an ambassador, you have to sell your country positively. Even where there negativity, you have to find a way, a diplomatic way of discussing it in a manner that makes it appear we are handling the matter. So much as personally, I don't like democracy. I mean, I don't like diplomacy at all. I always like to talk about it as it is. But when you're outside there, you know, you have to learn the language of talking,
diplomats, yes,
of diplomacy and protecting your own. And this does not only happen in Africa. In Africa, for example, we are fortunate as Africans also to belong to ACP-EU, that is African, Caribbean, Pacific, jointly with European Union Parliament. You know, European Union as a parliament. So African parliaments, together with the Caribbean Parliament and the Pacific Parliament, we have a joint forum. I happen to have had a tour of about 3 years in that parliament. And you find that as Africans, we have to develop our own agenda. As African Parliament, we have to develop our own agenda, which we drive in the international parliaments. What is our agenda? In terms of, for example, simple thing like climate change. We must have a common front to fight. We must have a common position on partnership, because with ACP-EU is really to talk about what kind of development, what kind of economic development the AU can have with the African countries and Caribbean countries and so on and so forth. So we must talk a language that is common to Africa, a language of partnership, not a language of suppression or exploitation, land grabbing or things like that. We want a genuine partner that can come. So African parliaments, if we may summarize, African parliaments have a very big role to look at things above the local situation and look at things in terms of the continental good values and say, what is it that we can enhance that can drive all Africans together? That will make you drop the bad habits you have and join the African good habit. And then we move forward together. I think African Parliament have a lot to do, and I'm happy with my own parliament. When I was a member of the delegation, we discussed the reports from the Pan-African Parliament regularly. And I always put on the parliamentary agenda what is discussed there and what is to be domesticated here. And our parliament have always taken up our discussion very, very seriously and driven it forward. And one of them is to make Pan-African Parliament a legislative parliament, because right now we are only advisory and consultative.
Exactly.
Yeah, but now we want to make it like the East African Legislative
Well,
Council.
it's legislative.
We must make a law concerning common issues, concerning conflict. How do we resolve our conflicts? How do we use our African approach to resolving African conflicts?
Very good.
And I think those are the issues.
I call come in here from where Mama lives it. I want to start with you on the African agenda itself. Like you said, having the African agenda, that before we even get anywhere, the African agenda has to be it has to be common to all of us, first of all, and it has to be understood by all of us as Africans. Let's start on the African agenda bit.
Well, I must thank Mama Cecilia Ogwal, of course, for the role she has actually played locally and internationally. Because before we started this program, she was actually telling us how she was among the people who really campaigned for political space, and here we are now into multipartism. But you see, the African agenda is something that really can be developed right from our school, from schools. I and Stephen, some time back, we traversed this country, established Pan-African clubs in schools, so that students can grow with having that consciousness that they are actually Africans. Now, there are particular, those who do history at A level, there's a paper called African Nationalism. And it is not compulsory, it is actually an optional thing. So that it's those actually perhaps who do that paper would also be conscious of that. So coming up with an African agenda is something that we need to start from schools, so that the children are conscious. But also, political parties, now that we are in a multi-party dispensation, which Mama Cecilia Ogwal was among the people who really championed for the opening of a political space, I think there is a lot to do that political parties also should have their people who are ideologically mature. That people should not jump onto parties for purposes of winning elections and it ends there. They should also know, yes, if I'm a member of NUP, what is NUP's agenda for the nation? What is NUP's agenda for the continent? How is NUP going to push the continental agenda? I think that is what is very, very, very important. Because I remember we were at a forum with Honorable Cecilia, and she really made it very clear that in Uganda, we shall always quarrel, whether you're FDC or what, but once we're outside Uganda, we speak as Ugandans. And that is what we need to see. That is what we need to see. Now, still talking about the African agenda, the African agenda, because before you're an African, you belong to a tribe, you belong to a clan, you belong to a nation, then you're an African. So that is where it begins. And this also takes me to the attempted assassination on General Katumba Wamala. That if you're not a conscious African, that can derail a nation. I'll give an example. In the 80s, when in Zimbabwe, when actually Robert Mugabe and Joshua Nkomo agreed to work together, so as they would push the nation, the young Zimbabwe that had got independence, the apartheid regime in South Africa saw that as a threat. So what did they do? They got guns, smuggled them on Joshua Nkomo's farm. So that, and then the speculation was that Joshua Nkomo was mobilizing the Ndebele to overthrow, and that was the beginning of the Matebele massacres, of those massacres, because Mugabe at that time really thought that actually these people are a threat to his. So the same thing, you could also look at this and say, look, it is an internal contradiction. Maybe somebody would say, look here, if a person of Edward Katumba Wamala is from Central Uganda did not vote for NRM, and an enemy country can do that to destabilize. So if we are not conscious, we can easily fall for that. It was the same scenario that with the Jaramogi and Moi, that in the 60s, one of the reasons why actually also they fell out, that there was a ship that came carrying military hardware, and it was alleged that it was coming on orders of Jaramogi, who was the vice president, and Kenyatta didn't have information.
the recent sheep also which dogs.
He's talking about the 60s.
I would not
He's
talk
talking about the 60s.
I would not talk about that.
Not the recent
So,
sheep.
no, of course, I'm trying to give you a background that in the event that you have a leadership, you have political players in our national parliament, so in the national government, that are not conscious of such, knowing that, look, as a country, we should always know that we have to protect ourselves first as a country, even when we have internal contradiction, then you end up exploding. Then lastly, still, she talked about her role in the Kadaga Olanya. And I think that is where political parties should borrow a leaf from her, because you don't need to be NRM.
Actually, somebody think,
yes,
why did it have to be Mama Cecilia Ogwal
Yes.
and not another elder
Yes.
in the
That's
national
what I'm saying.
movement?
So you're
I probably
saying-
do it too.
Excuse me.
Yes.
You see, Nobel Peace Prize is not for the masses. It is for the people who dare. You can dare from anywhere, and you.
Irrespective of the political
Yes.
Irrespective of.
So to Gujagenda, what I was to say that we, even as political parties, that even when we are competing against one another, but there's what we call national interests. So because Mama Cecilia Ogwal, her experience in politics shows that no, even when they are only the opposition, but as a country, the institution of the speaker, whoever goes through, leads everybody. He's not speaker for NRM, he's not speaker for
Speaker of Parliament.
He's speaker of Parliament. And therefore, the speaker or the institution must remain united.
That's
so
what
that
Mama
yes,
Cecilia
yes.
Ogwal said, that when she goes as a leader of a delegation,
Yes.
and she now sees us being anything, and she becomes Uganda.
Yes.
So when she's speaking, she has to see the best way to actually market Uganda, not to say the bad things about Uganda, because those are internal issues. You wouldn't want to say the same bad things when you visit a home in somebody's. You go somewhere and say, you know, this is happening in my house. You have to be diplomatic. Like
so Jagenda, in a nutshell, I also think that media houses also need really to play a key role in reawakening people's consciousness towards the African agenda. Like during that time of colonialism, when Africa was actually dependent on the media, Western media, there was one Ben Bella who said, look here, we need to have our own media that is going to tell our people our own story.
it is part of the agenda.
Yes.
Because even just talk about the media itself, we're
Yes.
talking about the agenda.
Yes,
Ordinarily, you know, we had the conventional ways of communication. Now today, we're not setting the agenda. Somebody said the agenda, so we are into some new media where we also, I think, missing the point. So Mama here was talking about the African agenda. So when we talk about this agenda, where do we want the agenda? Are we talking about just the economic agenda? Are we talking about the political agenda? Are we talking about all these agendas, including the media itself? We're going to take a break, but when we return, I'll start with the two gentlemen here, Ndugu Asima and Tuko. The African Union is riding on a theme of silencing the guns. Now, we very well know that one of our biggest problems on the continent is actually a gun problem. We just, you know, when you talk about it, silencing the guns, it is because you're hearing of a war in Sudan, you're hearing of a war in Libya, you're hearing of all the things. But silencing the guns to the point that a foster general in a country like Uganda, which is an island of peace, in the region, you can have that attempt on his life in a way. So we will talk about that itself and see fostering. How can parliaments now, for example, help us in fostering that? Because if the African Union is talking about silencing the guns, which is a very pivotal key or pivotal thing to discuss, before talking about how to measure and get household incomes, but why would one have money in their pockets and they're not sure if they will actually walk from the house where they have the money to another shop where they can use this money to transact or do anything with them? We'll take a break and return. Remember, we're continuing with the Pan-African Friday live here on our UBC TV. My name is Jagenda Samakola Ziksoka, and in studios is Mama Cecilia Ogwal, Member of Parliament Member of Parliament for Dokolo District. I have Ndugu Tuko here, a born of Ngariam, and he's a member of the NRM Secretariat and a researcher, a Pan-Africanist. And Ndugu Stephen Asimwe, the Resident District Commissioner for Gombe District, and Kola Mazima for UBC, here where we are. We'll take a break and return.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra. Click of the day on UBC, brought to you by.
Their job is to keep you and me healthy and well. But sometimes they try in vain.
Was brought to you by.
We've cut and reduced our MTN Momo withdrawal rates. Now you can withdraw mobile money at the lowest rates. You also get MTN Central Points when you deposit, send, and withdraw MTN mobile money. Visit our Momo agents countrywide and withdraw mobile money at our reduced rates from 1st May 2021. Everywhere you go, MTN.
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field could not be possible without it.
And now we can watch our favorite show.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development, and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content and innovations. Driving the development of a robust communication sector in Uganda is Uganda Communications Commission.
The Teacher Management Information System, TMIS, is one of the innovations the Ministry of Education and Sports has rolled out to have all teachers register online. This is in line with the spirit of the National Teacher Policy to professionalize the teaching profession and the Ministry's effort to collate teacher data in a single database for better teacher management. Join us as we host officials of the Ministry of Education and Sports to discuss the Teacher Management Information System. The show is sponsored by the United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, under the Norwegian Teacher Initiative in collaboration with the Ministry of Education and Sports.
Let me drink one for the road. Let me drink one for the road. Oh, Sajate Unjimba. You only need the light when it's burning low. Only miss the sun when it starts to snow. Only know you love her when you let her go. Oh, oh, oh.
No, I've never been someone shy until I seen your eyes. Still I had to try, yeah. Girl, every little thing I do it for you. In every little song I sing it for you. I'm so happy.
Echa COVID-19 chijja kugwa. If we get vaccinated now, observe social distancing, wear masks properly, sanitize or wash our hands with soap and water regularly. Together we can defeat this enemy.
Coming soon on UBC.
Therefore, understanding this model. Hey, excuse me, lady. Who do you think you are? A queen?
Hey, haven't you heard? Get Airtel Chillax bundles and browse like a queen.
Get Airtel Chillax bundles that do not expire and browse like a queen or king. Dial *175# or use My Airtel app.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
What does it mean to be closer together? It's taking the last bus home for a surprise visit. Closer together is strangers finding a connection. It's bringing home something much more than a box. It's the warmth of home, or the beginning of something new. There's magic in sharing the things that we love, because it's those things that bring us close together.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Therefore, understanding this model. Hey, excuse me, lady. Who do you think you are? A queen?
Hey, haven't you heard? Get Airtel Chillax bundles and browse like a queen.
Get Airtel Chillax bundles that do not expire and browse like a queen or king. Dial *175# or use My Airtel app.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
An e-invoice is issued by VAT-registered taxpayers, while an e-receipt is issued by non-VAT registered taxpayers.
Uganda Revenue Authority, developing Uganda together.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Welcome back from the break. Thank you so much for once again joining us on Pan-African Friday. My name is Jagana Samakola Ziksoka on UBC TV on this day, the 4th of July in this year 2020. Now we carry on with our conversation of the African Parliament in fostering and advancing the African agenda. Ndugu Stephen Asimwe. We took a break and I just posed one to you there of silencing the guns as an African Union theme, which they're actually talking about. Now, when we talk about silencing the guns, many of our minds run to only the war-ridden areas of the continent, but these things are actually happening. Looking at what just happened to us a few days ago, the attempt on Katumba Amala, which of course claimed the daughter and the driver. Let's carry it on from here.
Thank you very much. I just want to add what Cecilia has said. You see, this thing of silencing the gun is historical. When you look at Europe itself, they didn't form European Union to saturate the Holy Communion. No, it is peace and security. And you see, when you have got that silencing the gun, you can see Uganda. Of course, we still have some small areas where people are conflicting on land. But you see, when she talked about Kone and others, you can see the ADF in the other side. But the moment you silence the gun, now the planning becomes effective. Because you are now saying you are going to construct this. and then people start wars, and they destroy. You see, when they formed the European Union, you can now see that the whole of Europe now, you can have these crimes, actually the ones we are talking about against the general. When you go in the US, just somebody can enter a school and shoot 12 children, or a church and shoots the priests. But of course you find that the silencing the gun, why they brought it, from 1960s up to 1980s or 90s, you have been finding that Africa was flooded by what? Wars. When you look at when they formed the African Union by 2001, 2002, and they put up something with Obasanjo and the president of Senegal, his former president, they put up NEPAD, New Partnership for African Development. And Cecilia was talking about partnerships. They wanted to see that Africa can get out of these wars and then develop, put up an infrastructure. For example, if this whole of Congo, you have generated electricity, you have talked about timber, you have talked about this dam in Ethiopia.
The GAD.
You cannot have any other thing you are describing as a dark continent. For example, you see the generation of that, if they finished that dam, because they call us a dark continent, because we are always in a what? In the darkness. So you need to make sure that whole place, and even when you look at these insecurities also, you are talking about putting up CCTV, but also it is not easy. I don't know where you come from, like in my village. If you put up a CCTV, for example, now, to man it in an area which is rural, you need this infrastructure that can reach those areas in terms of roads, in terms of electricity, in terms of what. So this agenda, if they silence the gun, I think the development, you can see, yes, Uganda, we are not yet in the middle income, but we are about to. Now, if we had the development, now, Cecilia, from Dokoro, if you have connected Dokoro to Soroti, and you connect Dokoro to Lira, and then you come here to Oyam, if you get these rail lines, if you get, then our people do a lot of business, do agriculture, then the parliament, as she was talking, does the guidance and makes the law, and the people will be, but you see, you need also to do all that. You need cadreship. You need a trained group. You get me? Let me tell you, I'm not a Catholic. But there is nothing that the Pope can release that the rest Catholic in my village will not get. You get me? So these agendas, they are good at African Union in Ethiopia, in South Africa, in where, but are they domesticated to the Wananchi? Do they reach the people? But these other people, you were talking about colonization, missionaries. When they came, there were very few. But every village now has a church. Actually, I have never heard of any village where people are demonstrating that they don't have a church. You have many people demonstrating about roads, about my MP is not seen, the RDC is not there, the chairman, but every village. How? So that chain goes up to the village. So you need that cadreship.
Okay.
Are you getting me? And there is nowhere I have seen people asking that now that the Pope has not come, people will not be wedded. No, the cadres are there of the church. So when you create that cadreship, from the village, you know he's a parish chief. The parish chief, even if he may not conceptualize the whole agenda, but there are a few things he can know. For example, issues of health, public health, just simple public health, issues of security, to know who are your people in the village, what do they do. Okay. When you go to the district, these cows, the ones you call cow or cows, depending on where you come from.
They're cows, yeah.
Then the big RDCs. Then when you come to parliament, you know. You are not talking about Pan-African parliament. But before you go to Pan-African parliament, first of all, you must understand Pan-Africanism. So that when you reach South Africa, if you are in Durban, where you are not surprised. But the challenge you have, Mama Cecilia, some of the cadres you have in those parliaments, when they leave our villages, you see how we grow. You are from a village, you have been a village tyrant, and fortunately you become a member of what? Parliament. Now when you reach there, these are some of professors, experienced MP like Cecilia, then you get shocked. You can't even finish the whole year without saying anything. But you are a representative. Now, in Parliament, if you don't speak,
okay,
and he really adjusted the document, he complement the document, you must get out without anything for your country.
Okay.
And another thing which I agree with her, issues of diplomacy. A country, when you get out, you are getting out with our flag. Whether you are in NRM or in opposition, but you have a flag of where? Uganda. It is like an army with an army son and where. So you also need to understand what is Uganda. Internally, what is Uganda? What ails Uganda? What are the challenges of this country? Otherwise, you may reach there, they ask you, but as a member of parliament for this country, what specific issues can you raise in this committee or this parliament? And you find that you are on other things, you are not part of the agenda. So that agenda itself needs a vibrant group, a very well trained and focused in order to transform. By the way, you cannot speak what you don't understand. You only need, I give it to because Mama Cecilia is a religious person. Why I like these priests when they are coming to church, you can't really fault them. You can't even divert them. But for us, you have seen in our politics, somebody is moving in this political party, when it rains, he can easily. So that means, because you even heard from Cecilia that some people are locked in a hotel being given what? Now, if an MP can be bribed, so what about a councillor in my village representing a parish per sub-county?
Hold it there. Otuko, very important, because we're talking about the domestic parliaments or the national parliaments in fostering this agenda. But from what Mama Cecilia Ogwali submitted is it just goes beyond you saying I am actually a member of parliament in the Pan-African Parliament. And I'm thinking, because you don't set your own agenda, to actually say, I was appointed or voted or given the mandate by my political party. I'll talk about the political parties in Uganda. You can't say, it is FDC that has appointed me to go to the Pan-African Parliament, so I will take the FDC agenda. It is the National Unity Platform, it's NRM, it's Uganda People's Congress. Because I am UPC, so when I go to the Pan-African Parliament, I will set the agenda and actually say, we as UPC back home, this and this and this is actually not happening well. We talk about people, we just look at what kind of people. We normally say that the members of parliament or the leaders that we have at different levels are a reflection of who we are. Is this the same thing when we get out there? That the members of parliament that we send to the continental parliament is actually a reflection of what the wananchi of that particular country they look like?
Well, thank you very much. I think Mama Cecilia has competently deliberated on very critical issues about the African interest and the strategic direction that we should take as Africa. Before I talk about the reflection, or whether the people we send are a reflection of what we are, I think it's important for us to appreciate four strategic areas of interest that a parliamentarian in any parliament in Africa must understand. One of the issues is the strategic interest in defense. When we talk about defense, we are talking about the silencing of the guns. We are talking about the peace and stability of African countries. When you examine the African countries, African defense forces, you'll actually realize that most of them are relying, some of these forces are relying on foreign funding. And I think that is a strategic mistake, number one. Because if we want to stabilize Africa, then we must fund and train our own armies.
So in other words, without having, yes, a hyena funding a goat. Exactly.
Yes. Something of the sort. Because if we are to stabilize and drive Africa
and silence the guns.
And silence the guns. Number one is we must sort out the issue of funding and training of African armies. Because I believe that African countries now have the capacity to be able to train and fund, because we have the resources. You know, sometimes when I listen to some of the Ugandan leaders complain on media, and they are complaining that there is too much allocated on defense, and more so it is locally generated. And I think they miss a point, because to me that's strategic. Because if we want to talk about the stability of Uganda, we should not have anybody talking about funding our army. We should be able to do it as a matter of priority so that we are able to stabilize Africa. And I think this should happen across African armies so that we are able to first sort out the issue of dealing with the invisible hand. Because we believe, Mama here has been talking about some of the conflicts are induced. They are induced through these forms of mechanisms of funding. But we should also be looking at, for example, last week I talked about the regional blocks. Museveni's idea is that we can first build the regional blocks and make them stronger.
We have 8 of them on the continent.
But we have not talked about the defense mechanisms in these regional blocks, because we are only talking about the politics and the economy. But we are not talking about the security and the stability of these regions. So I think it is high time we should be able to look at how to have a standby force, for example, the East African standby force, the SADC standby force, the ECOWAS standby force, because these forces will be able to help us deal with the situations like what is happening in Mali, where you have somebody, a militant, rising up to go against a democratically elected government. So we must have, as we build these regional blocks in terms of the economy and trade, in terms of the politics, we should also be able to look at the military angle. How do we build the military units within these regional blocks? And these military units should be able to build into the African standby force, so that if we have a continental problem, we are able to make a resolution in Addis Ababa and say, we cannot tolerate what is happening in Mali, we are sending a force.
We isolate those,
we isolate
the
you,
perpetrators. And
we are able to send a force to rescue a situation in that kind of country. But if we are in a situation where there is a military problem or there is a crisis in a specific country in Africa, you do not have a standby force, you are begging member countries to make contributions, this may delay the process, and yet people are suffering and the crisis escalates. I actually sometimes get problems when I see UN, for example, making a statement about an African problem, and the African leaders are quiet about it. And I see that's a kind of retrogression back towards a situation where we were not organized. We must appreciate those leaders, for example, Mama Cecilia, those who have been existing for some time, that they have been able to make strides, even if we still have a lot to do, but they have been able to make strides to raise the consciousness of some of the leaders in Africa to understand that we need a united Africa in dealing with continental issues. To me, I think that is one of the things they have been able to achieve. Okay. There is a big number, a critical mass of people now thinking in the same direction, that we must have an Africa that is united, that can be able to consolidate together and deal with African problems. Okay. In terms of trade, in terms of education, in terms of infrastructure that he was talking about, the roads, the electricity, and so on and so forth. So I think that is what I wanted to say about that. However, when you get back home and look at the political players, there are very few individuals that make a contribution like Mama Cecilia has been stating here, what she does when she is outside Uganda. In most cases, we find the spirit of nationalism in Uganda is dead. Most times, we find the spirit of Pan-Africanism is quite low. I was in Beijing about 2 years ago, and interestingly, when we were in the Great Wall of China, I found black Africans. I got so excited because everyone around there was actually a European. And for us who had come from Uganda, to see other black Africans in the same place, we felt it was a privilege. But to our surprise, when we approached these people, they never wanted even to talk to us because they do not feel they don't even want to be associated
with Africa.
And yet they were from one of the African countries. We felt very disappointed. Why? Because for us, because of the training that we had, our level of consciousness about being proud of being an African was a bit higher than theirs. Why? Because there was a deliberate approach to nurture and to consciously tutor people to understand the strategic direction of Africa. And I think this is what all political parties must do. We must raise a deliberate policy within political parties to ensure, if it is not within political parties, then we must have a national policy on ideological orientation, so that we must understand the strategic direction that we go as a country, but also as a continent.
Okay.
Now, when you talk about the quality of the people that we send, I think there is a lot that needs to be done. For now, we do not look at
Are you insinuating that we send Kwara?
I am not insinuating so, but the point I am making is that there is a problem. And what is the problem? What are the benchmarks the yardsticks that we use to select people that we send to the Pan-African Parliament? For now, I think it's about deployment. For now, it's about allowances. For now, it's about
giving opportunity.
Giving opportunity to people. It is not about understanding the continental issues. Because if by random sampling, as I said last week, that we interacted with some of these people who have been sent to Pan-African Parliament and say, what is the strategic military objective of the African continent, they may not be understanding. If you ask them the strategic relationship between Uganda and Congo, why is the president insisting that we must construct a road in eastern Congo? And
is it because Uganda has too much money that they want to make roads somewhere else also?
So if you ask them those kind of questions, why NRM and President Museveni are clearly advancing the need to construct road infrastructure in Congo, they may not understand. They may actually be thinking maybe political reasons or whatever.
Okay.
So they may think Congo also voted for us.
So the point I am making is that we must rethink our strategy in terms of whom we send, so that we are able to send the best that can represent our strategic issues, both in the region but in the continent.
Mama Cecilia Ogwal, because you've been there before, and none of us has been there, because you've been there before, we can talk about all the things, but we are lucky to have you who has been a player there. Now, it is on record, and we know you as one of those who championed the return of multipartyism in this country. You did what you could do, and here is where we are today. Now, we freely sit and talk about issues of politics in this country in our different political shades, and we accept one another as such. You say, I'm this, I am that, I am that, I am independent, but we still get these levels. Now, the Wananchi know that in all parliaments, we are now used to the multi-party dispensation where we have a parliament that has the ruling government and the opposition. When we go to the Pan-African Parliament, for example, now it is this parliament where we also want to ascertain who is in the opposition in that parliament and who is not in the opposition, because we want to get to these issues. And when you get to parliament, do you decide what to say? Do you decide what to talk about? Or you can talk about things that affect the continent? He just raised one very important thing, that you may go to the Pan-African Parliament and, for example, say, why is our government, you are now not saying it in the parliament in Uganda with Speaker Jacob Bolanya, but you are in the Pan-African Parliament in Johannesburg, and you're saying, my government is actually constructing a road in Congo, and possibly I want you members here, please help me. You know, I do not agree with the sitting government in Uganda. I am NUP, I'm FDC, I'm all these things, and my government is actually building a road in Congo, but please, can you come and rein in? What really happens, and I'm just talking about that because you've been there, and the quality itself of people that we send there, are we mindful as political parties that Mama Cecilia Ogwal is going to represent us as a political party, but above all, she's going to represent the interests of this country, Uganda?
I think let's start from the exercise we had recently. We have elected the leadership of Parliament, Speaker and Deputy Speaker. Imagine a situation of a member of Parliament, brilliant, probably a professor, has been a professor at the university, and is very known in the academic world as having published many papers and things like that. And NRM Secretariat or FDC or whatever comes up with the candidature of this person. Would you vote for that person? The answer is no. Because when you are looking for a speaker, you are not looking for academically advanced person.
Yes.
You are looking for a person who understands the culture of Parliament, what Parliament does, and has been grounded in the practice of
parliament.
So that's the kind of person we'll be looking for. So the principle applies.
It cuts across.
It cuts across. It will be a disaster. It will be a real disaster, because I've been there. I've been in ACP EU before I went to Pan-African Parliament, and from the very first day that I sat in that ACP EU, I wrote a petition which was signed by European Union members and even African and Caribbean Pacific members, requesting that women be represented in the bureau of the ACP. Yes, because here it's a global organization bringing all the parliaments together.
Without women.
Without having a woman
at the bureau.
I said, this is a disaster. No, I mean, I looked at it, but the question is, were there no women before I went there? There were women, but the perceptions were different. So you need to have somebody who is sensitive about African agenda, sensitive, and the African agenda is holistic. It's not just centered on security or, you know, or centered on fighting the dictators and therefore have a democracy in place, or fighting about economic development and things like that. It is holistic. So we have to look at, yes, security agenda. We have to silence the guns, as you said. That is what we have agreed on. But at the same time, we have to look at building infrastructure within the continent, starting with the region, and then, and for me, I've always said, never ever preach about national unity. Never talk about national unity unless you are united in your house. Unless you are united in your party. Then you can come out of your party, which is united, to talk about national unity, because you are practicing. You believe in that principle and you practice that principle. So, as Ugandans, as a Ugandan, I would urge the leadership that be, never ever make a disaster. To send somebody outside who is going to carry the flag of Uganda and does not know the dynamics of diplomacy and the politics, the global politics, the geopolitics, and so on. You must understand it.
Because while in that parliament, you are referred to as Honorable Cecilia Ogwal of Uganda, not Honorable Cecilia Ogwal of this political party.
By the way, they don't even do that. In Pan-African Parliament, there we are taught, the moment you have sworn to be a member of Pan-African Parliament, you are a member of Parliament of Africa.
Yes. Parliament of Africa.
You cease to be a member of Parliament for Uganda. And for me, my delegation, I used to tell them, the moment we enter the plane, pump, Uganda is off.
You are Africa.
You must go there, go to Pan-African Parliament when you are an African. We are going to speak in one voice. We are going to look at things from the African perspective. And that is how to deal with a global issue. So when you talk about agenda, we have to make sure that we are being holistic. For example, I need to really thank actually Uganda is a blessed country. Our Uganda has contributed a lot in shaping the culture in Pan-African Parliament.
Uganda?
Uganda, yes. We have had Honorable Abdul Katuntu, who actually dealt with the Darfur crisis.
In Sudan?
In Sudan. While he was in Pan-African Parliament, we had Miriam Matembe, who actually was able to shape the women agenda in the Pan-African Parliament. You know? And then, of course, we had, I was in there, and I went to a committee. By the way, Ugandans, I think we are different, because in Pan-African Parliament, to find one country having, because one country has 5 members.
5 representatives.
And that's a general rule. 5 representatives, 5 delegates. Now, it's very rare to find 2 in the leadership of the committees and caucuses. But Uganda, of my 5 delegates, all of us were in leadership except one. And that one is by choice. He just didn't want.
Mm.
But all of us were planted. Even people whom the party, some of the parties underrate members. But we put them in those positions of leadership. And everybody wondered, what is wrong with you? What is going on in Uganda? But we were all in leadership. So I must say, Ugandans who are sent up there have been able to do something differently. I was put in a committee that deals with finance, administration, and accounting. It's like PAC, but with a lot of administrative matters involved. So I made sure, drawing also from my professional experience, to overhaul the administration system of the Pan-African Parliament. I had to ask one question. This is a global organization. This is a continental organization. At the Secretariat, we want to see all the 5 regions there.
At the Secretariat?
At the Secretariat.
Yes.
Yes. If there is a clerk and 2 deputies, if that clerk comes from the south, the other
one
deputy must come
comes from the north,
the other
and
deputy
another
must
from
come
the
from
east.
another one. You know, that's how it should be. But I found that the East Africans who were at the Secretariat were clerks and drivers from East Africa. I said, no, it can't. I can't
we
work.
can't produce any clerks
No
and drivers.
way. So I had to overhaul that system.
There were no cooks.
And I was happy. I was vice chair because I just entered Pan-African Parliament. So I was vice chair of the committee.
Yeah.
The advantage was that Zimbabwe was going through election. So the Zimbabwean who was the chair now left the chairmanship to me. So I had the full mandate to bring in corporate governance principles
as an acting chair.
Yes. Yeah, the chair now. I mean, it's not no acting there. The chair is not there.
The chair is not there.
So the system was overhauled, and indeed it brought a lot of impact there, a lot of overhauling, because we must speak Africa, and if we are going to speak Africa, the Secretariat that runs the affairs, administrative affairs of Pan-Africa, must also carry that image. So it's very important that the people you choose to go and represent Uganda must be people who are grounded in politics, grounded in international and global politics, so that when you are there, you are speaking from the position of knowledge. You are not just coming to learn. There's no time to learn.
Madam Cecilia, you just said something here. When you get to the Pan-African Parliament, you become members of the African Parliament.
Yes.
You take oath as members of this African Parliament.
Yes.
Are you allowed as Mama Cecilia Ogwal from Dokolo in Uganda to talk about or to represent any country there, to talk about any issue that concerns any country that is not Uganda?
Well, I've already told you that when we are there, we are Africans. We are the voice of Africa. Actually, the catchword there, our motto there is one Africa, one voice. One Africa, one voice. Yeah, one Africa, one voice. So I speak, okay, I come from Uganda, but I speak for Africa. But in the process of speaking for Africa, there are incidences where you have to bring in Ugandan issue, if it is an issue. For example, if we have conflict in Uganda, you use that platform to address the issue of conflict in Uganda. So that is it. But the point I'm trying to say is the people we send there must be able to make a difference. And I can tell you that Uganda, for example, Uganda delegation was able to bring in the issue of youth as a central theme. As one of the women used to have a caucus, and then others, but the youth did not have a caucus. But we do realize that youth and women are very key social groups that need to be addressed differently. And therefore, if you are addressing the issue of women, you must also address the issue of youth. And in the continent of Africa, when you talk about unemployment, it's not only in Uganda. It's a continental challenge. So let's address it together. And I was very proud that under my chairmanship, one of my delegates, this lady Jacqueline Amin, brought in a motion which was adopted, and by the time I left Pan-African Parliament, the youth now had a caucus. So there is now a formal committee of the youth which actually discuss and develop policies how we are going to address the youth. And why is the youth important? It's not only the unemployment and so on. The youth are the ones that feed in. They're the ones who drive conflict. They're the ones who are easily, I mean, look at Uganda now. If you want to create a protest, you look for you don't look for Mrs. Ogwal to go and protest on the street. You look for young men like these fellows here.
Mrs. Ogwal cannot burn a tire on the street.
Actually, in Uganda they say the elders conflict and the youth fight.
Yes, the youth fight.
Oh, the elders conflict and the youth fight.
So you have to make sure you keep the youth managed. You must manage the energy of the youth. And the only way you can manage the energy of the youth is to make sure you challenge their energy, you challenge their knowledge in a direction that is productive.
Yes.
And that is how we should develop an African agenda in the continent. And that will help us even to address the issue of conflict. So when you are now going to recruit the youth, where will you find the youth? In fact, I used to sit in the Constituent Assembly with a military man called Serwanga Luanga. And I used to tell Serwanga Luanga, if we don't resolve this issue in the Constituent Assembly, I'm going to go to the bush. So then Serwanga Luanga would tell me, but where will you find the youth? The youth are all Serwanga Luanga would say, you see, Mrs. Ogwal, at our time, we were still at university, we didn't understand anything, we just joined the bush. But now people have become enlightened, you look for the youth, you will not find them.
They are on WhatsApp.
So that the best thing is, let's quarrel, let's fight, let's discuss this
then
matter
find solutions
and resolve them here.
Yes.
So, and I really admire that young man, but he passed on. But this is the kind of thing I'm trying to say. And one of the things that hurt me as a Ugandan, as an African rather, is that for us to travel to Africa, there are some countries that must first go to Amsterdam.
Yes, and come back.
From Africa, you take a flight to go to Amsterdam, and then you come back
to Africa.
Or to Istanbul.
Can you imagine?
You start your journey in Africa, and you're supposed to end in Africa.
Yeah,
but you go through.
First go to Europe
to come to Africa.
And so you can see, we as Africans who are supposed to be poor, we are actually funding those. Yes, we are funding them.
By traveling to them.
And then another African agenda. We depend. I mean, we are talking about our economic challenges, and they say the only continent now with arable land is Africa. Now, what does it mean? It means agriculture is our backbone. Agriculture is our wealth.
Yes.
Okay? But now you can see in the 21st century, we still export raw cotton.
Yes.
Even from Uganda. With a very enlightened president. Our president is an economist and he's a military man. And I know him personally.
And he's a Pan-Africanist.
He's a Pan-Africanist. And he understands. And he has always talked about value addition. Value addition. But that's just preaching. It is not being practiced.
The cadreship down.
The cadreship down here. You're not helping the president.
No, the president is actually UPC cadre. He's well, yes, I know.
So you're not
actually,
helping the
I know.
But
I know even in that cabinet, those who are really proactive, I know them.
You and him, you all left UPC.
But, don't talk about, I'm talking about...
You went, so you left UPC there. But of course you went with the cadreship. That's most important. He went with the cadreship, and Mr. also went with the cadreship. So that's why you are not helping your very good president to actually implement these things, Madam Cecilia.
But you see, the cadreship it gives you a strong foundation.
Yes.
You look at things differently.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would have expected we as Ugandans to be an example. To say, for example, we grow cotton, but we make sure we process cotton, and we sell it as lint. Obote lived in a different generation. Obote had Mira spinning mill, a very elaborate industrial investment there. But that money has been wasted there. Why? Because it was set up by Obote. That is not right.
And Cecilia, that's what this parliament now
I know
should address.
But you see, the thing is, Parliament work differently. We have 3 pillars of state, and each one of us has demarcated area. You know, we don't cross the borders and begin. We can and begin to be implementers. We can only diagnose, leave it to the government. The government come to us, they ask for money. Instead of coming to us to ask for money to rehabilitate spinning mill, they would rather ask for money for doing things which are absolutely irrelevant. In fact, to promote more growing of seed cotton and more export of seed cotton, instead of asking for money to rehabilitate spinning mill so that we can process our cotton and sell it as a lint. And in fact, the greatest consumer would be Ugandans within the region. Because in Kenya, they would use our lint. Uganda here would use our lint. And even in the neighborhood, will use our lint. Instead of sending it to UK, sending it to America. So you can see, we don't know how to define our own agenda. So when we this agenda, I think you need another forum when we can really clearly define what is this African agenda. And then we can bring it on the table. Talk about women. You know, where is the women agenda here?
In NGOs.
Talk about women agenda has become NGO. In fact, the other day they were even removing money from the women, taking it to some what do you call it? Paris model. I mean, it's all messed up. So. And the youth, get the women, and the women are drivers. Really, in my constituency, I'm very proud of what happens there. I just educate some women. You put them on a program, and you'll see them working.
In your constituency, that's why they have made you a permanent MP.
No, that is not the issue. I don't look at things that way, but I look at things differently. It means show somebody the way, and they will move in it, including the youth. So I'm saying we must properly define our challenges. And let me give you one example. From the African agenda perspective, when I was in ACP-EU, the African Union observer team for the election and the European Union observer team for the election all condemned election of Kenya, the 2007 election. They all condemned in the 2 documents. Now, and all of them recommended a rerun. There should be a re-election
of Mike Kibaki and Raila Odinga.
Yes, whatever it is. Exactly.
Madam Cecilia, I and him were observers.
Exactly, you were observers. Exactly. So now this matter came before us, and I was there in the European Parliament, in the ACP-EU, and they were discussing my neighborhood, and I had to come out of my closet. I said, I'm now not a Ugandan. I have to defend Kenya. So I was a lonely voice.
Defending Kenya?
Yes, because now Africa had already expressed their position on Kenya. Kenya was condemned. Kenya must go through a re-election. Then European Union had also come up with a position. Now I had to come out with my minority report.
So your minority report grows from Uganda.
So I now had to stand up. I said, I've had the 2 reports, but I have a different opinion. The truth is, I'm the nearest neighbor. The truth is, all the people who are running from conflict in Kenya are running to Uganda.
They are spilling into my country.
The truth is, my own president has been to Kenya to try and resolve the conflict there. My truth is, if there is to be a rerun now, there will be more conflict, there will be more death, there will be more destruction. The truth is, we must first silence the gun, pacify the environment, then we talk about a rerun. People kept quiet. Total silence.
Giving you minority report.
And I told them, I am the nearest neighbor. I'm the most affected. Seeing these Kenyans running to us, our government has to take charge. of these people running to Uganda. And we cannot do it, and you are not going to go there to help us.
Yes.
So my only position now is that we must support the Kofi Annan initiative.
Yes.
That is, we must silence the gun, yes, get the two warring factions to sit together, they talk, they find a common ground, and we pacify the environment, then they can have a rerun. That was my position. And I did lobby the Social Democrats, because they have Social Democrats and then the other political group. So I lobbied the Social Democrats in the European Union, who were able to support my position. So we came up with a position adopting the Kofi Annan initiative,
yes,
which was driven by Uganda. So if you send somebody who is just entering parliament, I mean, it's a serious matter. And I didn't care. And by the way, one European stood up and abused me. He said, who is this African woman who is coming with our tribal culture into a global politics?
Somebody said that.
Yes, they abused me in the parliament. But as far as I'm concerned, my voice was loud enough to be heard.
Yes.
My voice was able to change the situation. Alone, my lonely voice, a minority report. Now, what happened when the Kenyans came? Eventually, of course, we accepted the Kofi Annan. Eventually, of course, the Kenyans sent their representative, and when they were making their first presentation in Parliament, I had to help them to work out the motion to be brought to Parliament. And among the resolution they had to pass was to thank the Kofi Annan, thank who. Can you imagine these people did not thank Uganda? Yes. So
another minority report.
Because now they are making a proper report. They are appreciating that opportunity was given to them. Now they are formally come. Now they are thanking everybody. They are not thanking Uganda. So I said, excuse me. Are you aware that I'm the one who caused this thing to happen? Are you aware that I come from Uganda? Are you aware? They said, yes. It is not in your motion.
Thanking Uganda.
Thanking Uganda. So now those people, I think they consulted and they were very annoyed that Ugandans were forced in manipulating the election in Kenya. They were annoyed. So what they did, they refused to change the motion. What I did, I went and talked to the chair, the co-president of
the
ACPU, and I told the co-president of ACPU that I'm going to move a motion on item number 17. And so he was already aware. I put it in writing, sent it to him, and then I lobbied South Africans, I lobbied some European Union, and said, I'm moving a motion I want you to support. Now these people were coming new, so they didn't know the procedure. Yeah. So when they were now reading the motion, I was up. Mr. President,
I am moving a motion.
I have this motion appreciating the president of Uganda for having visited Kenya and
facilitated
and promoted this coalition, or what do they call it?
Process,
pacification of the process, and also I think you are also aware that even ACPU should have been appreciated, because we discussed the matter and we resolved that Kenya should be given opportunity to go through the Kofi Annan initiative. So this was missing, so I begged to move, and it was passed. By the time they realized the motion had been changed and they were not aware, so because it took them by surprise.
It needed experience. Mama Cecilia, hold it here. Our time has actually run out, gentlemen. Let me start with the talk. Go to.
But before you go in there, I'm still on African agenda. Do you know that the AMISOM was an African agenda?
Yes.
AMISOM, this is the initiative
African mission in
to pacify Somalia.
Yeah.
Now, do you know that Uganda was the only country that had volunteered to drive that agenda? Do you know that the countries most affected were Ethiopia and Kenya?
Yes.
Do you know they were not ready and willing
to support,
to be part of that AMISOM which is an EU-driven agenda. So I constantly talked on the floor of Parliament, challenging them.
Kenya and Ethiopia.
Kenya and Ethiopia.
To come on board.
To come on board.
Until they came on board.
Yes.
Otuko, time is running out.
Yes.
Finally, we have 2 minutes to share amongst ourselves and get out of studios. Let's sum it up.
Well, I think listening to an experienced Mama Cecilia about her contribution in Pan-African Parliament, it's quite refreshing.
And the bar was set so high.
And it's very encouraging that we have people of her caliber representing Uganda in that kind of fora and defending the interests of Uganda irrespective of the political differences that we have at home. And I think this is something that has been lacking in Uganda, or that is lacking. And many young people who have come to Parliament should actually be mentored by you. I think I'm encouraging Mama here that in this Parliament, where we have many new MPs, I think I think it is important for you to create a discussion fora, a discussion group, to discuss Pan-African issues. It can even be a study group within Parliament, so that you give opportunity for young people of my age who have made it to Parliament to be able to learn the interests, the strategic contradictions that we have in Africa, and how to maneuver so that we can be able to influence and create a change in the strategic direction of Africa.
Asimwe, we have just less than 1 minute to move out of studios.
Being a teacher as I am, she reminded me of Napoleon Hill. She actually said that if you can't do great things, do small things in a great way. And I think that one summarizes her. And even Tom Mboya, the Pan-Africanist, who said the nation without history is like a face without a nose. So you see that this lecture is is needed by these cadres who are entering Parliament, because you come with a lot of pomp, with a lot of village experience, but when you come to this house and go abroad, you find the countries have passed through hard rocks.
It takes knowledge for a Ugandan to know that the problem in Somalia actually does not affect Uganda so much like it does to the neighbors.
So,
they need to come on board.
Again, that cadreship, and we need to get her wisdom to nurture these other young, most especially the young women who are entering Parliament. And some of them are very vibrant from universities with all those theories, but they need practicability of how to do things for the better Uganda and Africa.
Thank you, Simako. Finally.
Yes, I think finally I must say that leaders at all levels, once elected, they should endeavor to understand the strategic direction of their countries, of their communities, and of the continent. Then from her submission, we get to learn that the first political parties on the African continent had a vision, especially because they knew they were fighting for liberation. But now the political parties we have today is that Jagend and Akol quarrel, then the next day everybody has started his own party. And now our followers, unconsciously,
and they quarrel in a bar.
Yes.
so political parties now are vehicles to get in there.
Yes. Finally, I wanted to thank Mama, because I think her ideology and that of the president are not different.
Yes,
so
but they all left you.
No. The president believes in gun politics.
No, gun
military. Yeah, gun
gun
solution to problem. For me, I believe in the ballot.
But you've just confessed here that you are all UPC.
Yeah, we are
that was it. Well, I want to thank all of you. Thank you so much, Mama Cecilia Ogwal, for having allowed to join us in studios today. Thank you so much, Ndugu. Thank you, RDC Asim, and thank you so much, Akol Zima, and of course our other panelist, Ndugu James Mututa. He's a little indisposed. But we pray that he shall be well. Mututa is not feeling very fine. He's a little indisposed, but he's okay. He's fine. He got his second jab, I think, a couple of days ago, and we possibly maybe think it could be the jab bit of it, but that's really very important. Thanking all the backroom staff that have made this show another very nice one. Thanking you so much. Now, just remind you that This afternoon, the President will be opening Parliament officially and also addressing the nation in what we call the State of the Nation address. It's coming on UBC TV. We'll make sure that that comes live to the comfort of wherever you will be. And the President promised that he shall also speak to us on Sunday now on the second wave of COVID. Now, that is going to be second COVID talk since we talk about the second wave. We stop it here. My name is Jaged Asamakola Ziksoka, saying good morning and bye to everybody, wishing a very blessed weekend for God and my country, and we say that Jesus is Lord. Thank you very much.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Pick of the day on UBC, brought to you by.
Their job is to keep you and me healthy and well.